What is up, 49er faithful? Hopefully you are having a good evening. Some minor things happened today around the building. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about CMC signing. We're going to talk about Aiyuk and Jefferson, but not from a standpoint of Jefferson getting a big deal. We've already talked about that. But something else came out and flew a little bit under the radar when it came to him. We're going to talk about the new tight end, Logan Thomas, but also that the 49ers were interested in another tight end during the draft. Who could that have been? I think there's an obvious choice. And then we're going to talk a little offensive philosophy. So there's a lot on the docket tonight. Excited to get to it with my man, Sunil, and we're going to get to it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday night, which means I got my guy So Real Sunil in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Man, oh man, isn't it great to be a 49ers content creator? Because they keep giving us topics, right? You know, mandatory minicamp. Somebody's getting a new deal. Obviously, a deal came through. Maybe not the one everybody wants or is on, is waiting for, but still, we got a lot to talk about, my guy.
Bro, yeah, there is a lot to talk about. And the first thing on the order of business or on the docket would be the CMC deal. You're right. It's not the deal. Now, the speculation during non-mandatory OTAs with him not showing up was that he might be looking for a new deal. You kind of heard that from running back coach side, but not really from Shanahan. And then it was like, well, he's getting married, so that's probably what it is. Well, sure enough, he shows up today with a new deal in hand, making it pretty clear that he was seeking out a new deal. Now, when you look at the details of this deal, it gets pretty ugly towards the tail end. They basically added 2 years onto the deal, but really, when you look deeper at it, it's essentially still a 2-year deal with an out after those 2 years. Yes, they'll eat some dead money around $8.5 million if they decide to move on from him then, which I assume is probably what they're going to look to do. But ultimately, they gave him a pay raise, some guaranteed money over the next couple of years to keep him happy. First of all, are you surprised at this deal? And second of all, how are you feeling overall about it?
I mean, gotta give it up to some of the guys that were kind of calling it. And look, at this point, it's always about the money, right, Jesse? Like, if there's something going on where somebody's not showing up for certain things, it's always about the money. And as it should be, like, this is a business on both sides. It's not just, obviously we're from a fan base and sometimes, supportive of the team over the players, but the players are, looking out for them as they should, because ultimately their careers in this league can end at any moment. And you got to make sure your family and, your future is taken care of. So I wasn't necessarily thinking that this was a deal that needed to happen. I don't think the 49ers necessarily would have done it unless it came from CMC side, which it seems all indicators are that is the fact. But am I happy with it? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think it's easy to look at CMC and say, oh, he's a running back, and look at the running back type contracts and, look at it from that perspective and be like, well, why are you paying a running back so much? But he's not just a running back on this team. Like, he is the best offensive weapon the 49ers have. He's probably the best offensive player, you could say, outside of Trent Williams, and potentially with Trent Williams being, older and maybe not as prime as he used to be, CMC hasn't shown any kind of lack of ability. He's only done more and more, year after year. He's proven he could stay healthy this season. And, from all the indications of listening to Kyle, they plan on, using him less, which, to keep him fresher, keep him healthier, which I think is a great sign as well. But from an offensive weapon standpoint and what that does for an offense, for a young quarterback in Purdy, I'm happy with it. I'm glad you get him locked in. at least we're not thinking about that position, for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when we were talking about CMC a week ago, I kept saying, for me, I want to keep that flexibility. I like the fact that his contract was essentially up in 2 years. At that point, he'll be 30. Usually running backs at that age, you don't want to be paying big money. So when it first announced today and it was a 2-year extension, I was like, I don't really like this. I don't like the fact that he signed through 31. And then you started to see the tail end of it all came out in pieces, right? You heard about the deal, 2-year extension. So you're like, okay, so now he's under contract till he's 31. Then the next piece drops and it's like, okay, not only that, but they have big dead money the year after he's gone. They have a big cap number the final year he's there at 31. It's like they pushed this whole thing back. So I didn't like that. But then the final piece dropped, which was, oh, there's an out after 2026 with only $8 million in dead money. Now, I'm not a big fan of the dead money at all, but the fact that it's still essentially a 2-year deal with a bit of a pay bump, I'm all for that because it still helps them maintain their flexibility, which is ultimately what I wanted. And when I talked about it last week, what I wanted to see was a deal kind of like what they had done with Raheem Mostert. You remember the year, coincidentally, he ended up getting injured in week 1 and never played for the 49ers really. But that offseason, it was a big deal. He wanted more money. And the 49ers ended up giving him more money, giving him some guarantees, gave him a raise, but didn't really add on to his contract. That's essentially what the Niners have done here with a little extra fluff. But as long as they maintain that flexibility, I am fine with it. I just don't want to be locked in long-term to a running back that's going to be 30 plus years old coming off of as many carries. Now, it is encouraging to your point that it does sound like they are going to cut back on some of those carries, or at least now Shanahan seems open to it. That would be fantastic if we want to see him reach the end of this deal. So that would be great. I'll believe it when I see it. But for now, I'm actually okay with the deal now that all the details have finally emerged.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you get the best running back in the game under contract for another 2 years, but you also free up $8.5 million more in cap. What they're going to do with all of this cap space, I think they moved up into the I think 7th as far as cap space for a team that's contending for a Super Bowl. That's usually a good sign. But, they do have money, whether that goes to Brock Purdy, whether that goes to combination of Purdy and Aiyuk, or, maybe another, mid-season acquisition or something like that. It does give them a lot of flexibility in the future, but also flexibility this season or even next offseason, which I think is a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, somebody in the chat, here it is. Edgardo said, what move would you like to see for the 49ers to make to deem it as an all-in year or an all-in move? And for me, I like maintaining this cap flexibility this year, waiting until you need it, whether somebody gets injured in camp and you sign somebody or make a trade, or you get halfway through the season, the trade deadline's approaching, you realize, hey, we're in this thing. This team is ready to compete. You confirm that, and then you can make a deal mid-season, a lopsided deal where you take in a bunch of money and try to get it done. I mean, the 49ers have done this a couple times. It's worked well in their favor. They've been close. They haven't been able to cash in, but that's what I look for them to do. So who that player is, I'm not quite sure, but at some point I do expect them to make a move, maybe near the trade deadline or in camp if somebody were to get hurt, just to keep their options open. And then really you look at the 49ers cap number in 2026, I mean, big numbers from Bosa, big numbers from Fred Warner. Obviously, at that point, we assume that Purdy's deal will be kicking in, and then also Brandon Aiyuk's if he stays around. So they're going to need some of that flexibility, which means taking some of that money now, saving it, letting it roll over into next year, and continue to keep that flexibility is going to be important for them as well. So it's not just, hey, we're looking to go all in and then screw us up for the next 5 years. I think the 49ers want to remain responsible while also trying to win now. And I think there's a way to do that. And I think that they're doing a pretty good job of that right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, and buying more goodwill with the players. I think this is a good deal for a guy in CMC that has done a lot. In the year and a half he's been here, he's made a significant impact. You want to reward players like that.
Yeah, absolutely you do. Now, one player actually, before we get there, let's get to the super Samir says, hey, y'all, please feed the algorithm. He's been a member for 6 months. Appreciate you. That's his way of saying like the stream. It helps out. It definitely does help out.
And
so,
what I'm reading,
yeah.
it's not only likes, Jesse. Leave a comment. If you like what we say, if you don't like what we say, go ahead, leave a comment. And that really helps the algorithm, I think, even more than likes at this point.
Yeah, listen, bro, I don't know what Lombardi said. I know that it frees up cap. I know how it all works. I was more worried about the future. And everything kind of came out in pieces. So I'm sure that he broke it down, but I really don't know what he said. So,
and I don't think Jesse is looking to be pissed. I think everybody, this is what is funny about, the fan base. Everybody, if they watch Jesse or they watch me or whomever, we have certain principles that we abide by when we look at how we look at the team, our fandom, all that kind of stuff. Jesse's extremely consistent with his principles, which is, money doesn't just disappear, right? Whether it's guaranteed or there, eventually you got to pay the bill. And to Jesse's point, he sees players kind of by age, even if, in talent, he kind of uses that as his rubric, which I think is a fair way of looking at things. For me, I'm more manalytics than analytics at some points. And I think we both have a balance, but I don't think Jesse's looking to be pissed. I just think that fits his criteria of what is a bad contract when it initially came out. And then, as more information comes out, you have the right to change your opinion.
Yeah, I think there's certain things that I don't like. I don't like when they rework contracts and kick the can down the road. I've been very clear about that. This is a little bit different because they did leave that out after 2 years. And initially that didn't come out when the deal was broken. And then a couple hours later, Spot Rack had it. And I was like, okay, all right, this isn't as bad as what I initially thought. Because initially I was like, dude, look at that dead cap in 2028 when he's not here. Look at that final year in 2027. And I didn't see an out. I'm like, why would you do this? This doesn't make any sense. But once that out came in, I was like, okay, so this still is essentially a 2-year deal. That's what I'm looking for. So perfect. Dave says, said, ask Gavin Newsom, money does disappear. Dave Barclay says, Jess, Sunil, chat, love y'all. Drake Kyle, God, dude.
Man, Dave, it was going so well to the end, bro. Going so well to the end.
Yeah, exactly. All right. There was a player, however, that didn't show up and hasn't gotten paid yet, and that's Brandon Aiyuk. Now, the deal yesterday broke for Justin Jefferson. Happy for him. I think, at least I talked through it and said, I don't believe that the Justin Jefferson deal really impacts Brandon Aiyuk. They're in different levels. But I'm going to talk about it from a different angle because somehow this was swept under the rug. But I was reading today that the 49ers actually called the Vikings as the draft was starting or just before the draft, asking about Justin Jefferson, which I find very interesting. Knowing that Justin Jefferson was going to have to get paid makes you wonder, was Brandon Aiyuk a part of that trade? Was it going to be Aiyuk and something for Jefferson? Because there's no way you were going to pay Aiyuk and Jefferson in the same offseason. So this whole thing to me is kind of adding up a lot. There's a lot going on around this Brandon Aiyuk situation. What do you make of Brandon Aiyuk not being there today? Do you feel any less confident about a deal getting done? And then how do you feel about this Justin Jefferson rumor that the 49ers reached out about acquiring Justin Jefferson this offseason?
Yeah, well, last week I told you I don't think Aiyuk gets a deal, right? So I think he plays on his 5th year this year, and they either sign him or trade him next offseason. And I think a couple of things point to where I feel it gives me more confidence in that opinion. To me, obviously, if they were trying to get Justin Jefferson, they knew that they were going to have to pay Jefferson, make him the highest paid wide receiver. So it's not about them not be willing to pay the money that they need to pay. Clearly, they're not willing to pay Brandon Aiyuk more than the number that they've given. So if Brandon Aiyuk feels like he could get more than that or isn't happy with that number, I don't think they're going to budge from that number. Now, to me, what's interesting about all of this is they're still looking like this whole offseason, they're looking to upgrade their wide receiver room. right? Whether it be Jefferson, they obviously drafted 2 wide receivers in the draft. You know, we're going to talk about the tight ends here coming up. But it's interesting to me that, obviously they're looking for, to me, Brandon Aiyuk is the perfect receiver for the 49ers, right? He plays press man well. You know, he's a great blocker. He seems like he has the attitude, and he's consistently, gotten better year after year after year. I agree with you, man. Something deeper must be going on as far as why this hasn't gotten done. And I'm not saying it's only from the team's perspective. It could possibly be from Aiyuk, because earlier, Jesse, we heard that Aiyuk was worried about the money, but he's also worried about the opportunities that he gets. And he's not going to be a receiver in this system, in the 49er system. A receiver doesn't get, 140, targets like some of the top receivers are getting on other teams. And potentially maybe that's a sticking point for Aiyuk too. Maybe that's why he's looking for even more money, because he knows that his production is never going to get to the point where he could just get paid like a Tyreek Hill or a Justin Jefferson or whatever, regardless of whether you feel he's capable of putting up those numbers and stuff. But I think there's probably more that's going on than just the money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of broke down yesterday the contracts that the 49ers are probably looking at, which is like Waddle, Devontae Smith, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're like, listen, this is the area of production you're in. This is what we should be looking at as far as framework. But the one problem with those deals is none of them have a lot fully guaranteed. Debo actually has more fully guaranteed, and he signed a couple years ago than those 3. You look at Calvin Ridley, who didn't get near as much as far as his average annual value, but he's getting more and fully guarantees. So Aiyuk's got to be looking at that and going, okay, these other figures are great. I love the annual average. I love the full or the guaranteed number. I love all of it. But where's the fully guaranteed? When I sign, I want my 40 million up front, or my 45 million, or whatever that number is. These other guys aren't getting that. And so the Niners are probably operating from, hey, these are the deals that were done this offseason. He's operating from, hey, I want more fully guaranteed. And I think that's probably where the hang up is. But then you almost got to wonder, what is Aiyuk thinking? Because he sees that Debo got paid, obviously. Then they go and draft 2 receivers. Then they bring in, multiple pass catchers at other positions. Then they re-sign Jawan Jennings and extend him. Then the rumor comes out that he was being shopped, and the rumor that they were interested in Justin Jefferson. Like, there's a lot of things around this that say the 49ers, it's many points, sound like they were ready to move past Brandon Aiyuk in one way or another. Now, the good news is it hasn't happened. I still think a deal gets done, but it just adds more intrigue to this whole situation and kind of lends a little credence to what Aiyuk's doing. And I said this yesterday. I thought Aiyuk would show up because he wouldn't want to get fined. He just wouldn't participate. But we would know a lot based off of his strategy, depending on what happened today. Well, guess what? He didn't show up today. That tells me he's probably willing to not show up at training camp, and might be willing to hold out during the season if that's what it comes to, until the 8 or 11 game mark or whatever, which he can accrue a full season. So I don't think Aiyuk's playing around with this. I also don't think the 49ers are playing around, and that's kind of where we're at. We're in the middle, and we'll see how long it takes. Hopefully it happens during or before training camp. But man, this thing is getting more and more interesting. It seems like every single day with other things that are happening.
Yeah, and I think Debo gave us some insight too. He said, it's hard not to take things personal during this period. So, and he said he's, very, he's talking to Aiyuk. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a sign that there is some, negative feelings, even though it is business. Obviously, it's hard not to take things personal. And, the 49ers did, that now it makes it even, it makes even more sense of getting a first round draft pick as a wide receiver, right? If you knew that going into these negotiations, like, hey, maybe they are farther apart, like everything was said. So you go in and you get that kind of insurance policy. What's interesting though, Jesse, is the more the more Ricky Pearsall, if he shows out, because it was said that he had a good day today in training camp. As the hype around him gets more and more, I wonder how Aiyuk and his agent play that. Like, are they willing to? Because let's play this out. Let's say he holds out, right? And they don't give him. Okay. They're like, hey, just play on your 5th year, and Pearsall is balling out. Or, let's just say maybe not balling out, but let's just say he's playing well, right? Let's say Aiyuk does come back after whatever the mandatory so he can still play a full year, and they don't play him. How does that look for Aiyuk going into a free agent year where he has no tape? Like, how much money is he going to be able to get? Is he going to be able to get the contract that he wants? So, I don't know. It's hard to say who has the leverage right now or how much Brandon Aiyuk wants to bet on himself. But I think the 49ers are going to hope that Ricky Pearsall has an amazing training camp, because I think if more and more stories come out about him, probably gets closer and closer to Aiyuk maybe signing a deal.
Yeah, it's all a calculated risk, and we'll see how long that calculated risk plays out. I think at this point, we're not like doing any irreparable damage where things are just going to get sideways. This is kind of par for the course. Totally understand it. I'm just curious to see how long this whole thing plays out. And every time a new player for the 49ers gets a new deal, it's like, Aiyuk's got to be sitting there going, really? Another one? Like, where's mine?
And another thing to pay, like, so we've had maybe three experiences recently of players where the negotiations have gone into training camp, right?
Yeah.
Bosa, Debo, and now Aiyuk. The other two didn't start strong in the season, and Debo didn't have a good year at all that year, right? And he played a lot of it to not having a full offseason. For the 49ers, this being one of maybe potentially the last of this core, it would suck if Aiyuk comes back, you're not getting the full Aiyuk because he's missing training camp or not out there with the guys and maybe not in the best shape or all that kind of stuff. So you hope that doesn't play a role, because even a guy like Bosa, who we know is always in shape, he still even mentioned that not being there for the offseason affected his ability to, get up to game speed and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't ideal for the 49ers at all. Let's just put it that way. And hopefully a deal gets done sooner than later.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, whether he holds out, whether they sign him late. I don't think any of that is ideal. Just in the same instance that we look at it and say, well, trading him wouldn't make any sense, right? Why would you do that? You're trying to win a Super Bowl. Well, him not playing wouldn't make any sense, even if he's on this roster, and him not playing well doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, trying to get the deal done, super important at this point. Again, I think they do get it done. It's just a matter of when and not if. And if that win drags out till the last week of preseason like it did with Bosa, who knows what that looks like. So there's a lot going on here. And just to answer your question, Niner Cali boy, I read it was the Colts, the Jets, and the 49ers. Those three teams all called. So for what that's worth. Samir says, I'd trade Kyle to extend Dave as a comment creator. Nice. All right. Brother Bob says, yeah, Kyle Levy can't close. Sup all. Lame 30 equals, I don't know what that is. All right. Samir says, just curious, could y'all give me your top 3 favorite non-rookie contracts?
Bosa, Trent Williams, Fred Warner.
Yeah, just the best players. I'll go a little bit different. I'll say right now, Brock Purdy, because he's super cheap and he's the quarterback of a team and he's a good one.
That's a rookie contract, though.
Oh, non-rookie. Okay, I was thinking rookie players. All right, fair enough. Okay. Dre Greenlaw, they signed him super, super cheap, extended him year 1 into the Bears season, so I'll take that one.
I know you like that Colt McKivitz deal, bro.
Yeah, I love the Colt McKivitz one. You know that one. I would say John Feliciano, because I think he's one of the better offensive lineman on this team, and he's probably going to start somewhere, and he's very inexpensive. And then I'll say the last one. I'll go with Charvarius Ward, just because there's a lot of flexibility after this year. They can either choose to extend him or they can let him walk, but I think he's lived up to the expectations of his contract. So those are the three that I'll go with. Let's see what else. I feel like I missed one, but maybe not. Okay, got them all. All right, perfect. Well, speaking of pass catchers on this team, talked a little bit about the Logan Thomas deal yesterday. But then also, speaking of rumors came out that the 49ers were in on a specific tight end in round 2. However, they didn't draft a tight end in round 2. There was only one tight end drafted in round 2. Oddly enough, by the team that is run by Adam Peters, who has been in this building, was pretty much all through the season. So I'm sure that there were some players on each team's board that they shared. And that is Ben Sinnott, who was drafted in round 2, the only tight end. And the 49ers not drafting tight end, if they were in on a specific tight end, you got to imagine it was him. So now they pivot. They go and get Logan Thomas, who's more of a one-year stopgap. First of all, what do you think about Logan Thomas in that signing? And then just overall the tight end position, like where are you at with it?
Yeah, it's interesting because what team did Logan come from? So
Washington.
they basically got Logan's replay. Like Washington drafted the player that potentially the 49ers wanted, and the 49ers got the player that player replaced. So it's a triangle that I think, honestly, Jesse, we're going to see a lot of. I think the 49ers and Washington are going to be fighting for players for a long time now with Adam Peters over there. But look, Logan Thomas is a really good pass catching tight end, like a top pass catching tight end. His biggest thing has been health. Like he just can't stay healthy. So if he, in a role behind Kittle, this is the best tight end that we've had. The question is, can he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, this is a really, really good piece for the 49ers. It's a big if because I don't think he's ever been healthy. And especially recently, he hasn't been healthy. So what does that say? Obviously, the 49ers aren't sold on any of the depth that they have. Obviously Cam Latu, they haven't been able to see, but everything that we've seen from him hasn't been that great. The other guys that they drafted later on in the drafts, people don't know if they're going to keep them at, are those the tight end options? Or are those going to be, future use check replacements? Still yet to be determined, but we've been searching for a backup tight end for quite some time. This is the most talented backup tight end that has been on the roster. Do I like the move? I mean, he didn't play that much, if at all, last season. But if you do get some type of health out of him, I think it could be a really good move for the 49ers.
I'm going to look it up right now. I feel like he had close to 500 yards last year, if I'm not mistaken. I want to check it out real quick.
I don't think so.
I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, let me tell you. 496 yards last year. He actually, you know what? The last 2 years, it hasn't been bad. Before that, not great. But he played 15 games last year. He played 13 games the year before. So he's definitely missing games. The year before that, he only played 6. But, the way that I see it is if he's not asked to do as much, that's going to help keep him healthy, for one. He fits the bill of kind of what I was looking for, which is like, let's get a veteran tight end in here, a good number 2 that you can rely on. He wasn't a name that I brought up, but I'm totally fine with him. I love that he's here. What I find more interesting, though, is that the 49ers obviously initially were looking for not only a number 2 to Kittle, but possibly the pivot plan from Kittle in this year's draft. they ended up not taking a tight end. They get, you know, an undrafted guy in Pline and what have you. But that tells me that they're probably interested and know that the career of Kittle is closer to the end, and they've got to find that pivot plan, and they got to do it sooner than later. So I'm actually curious to see. Yes, they didn't get Sanat in this draft or any tight end. What does that look like next year? When do they prioritize tight end? Because this play here is one, maybe a 2-year deal. If you like what he brings to the table, you can bring him back next year. But what does the future look like? How do you replace them? And then the other thing that I think of is, what about the rookie tight ends from last year? What does this mean for a guy like Cam Latu? I mean, is the writing on the wall? It's basically over for him after just 1 year. Let's not forget that John Lynch did say last year that if it wasn't for injury, basically saving his roster spot, that he wouldn't have made the team. And that was a 3rd-round pick. They were willing to cut a 3rd-round pick because he looked that bad as a rookie. Luckily for him, I guess in a roundabout way, he was injured, so that saved his roster spot. But there's nothing saving it this year. Thomas is a very good tight end. I would imagine at this stage in his career, he's much better than anything you're going to get from Latu, so he's almost guaranteed. If you like Pline and what he's brought to the table, it's between Willis and Latu. What does that look like? And is Latu gone? I don't know, man. That's another thing that we've got to look at during this camp. Is the writing on the wall
Willis
for him?
is a better blocker than Latu, so potentially that's a guy that you'd want to keep since you got all the pass catchers, you know, with Logan.
More versatile. He can play a little bit of fullback, I believe, you know, so there's that goes into it. So I don't know, man.
It wouldn't be the first time that
it
wouldn't be the first time the 49ers cut a 3rd-round draft pick. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. It definitely would not be.
And you know, they usually cut a 3rd-round draft pick in the 2nd year. So this would be Latu this year potentially, because the year before it was what?
Sermon,
TDP, and the year before that was Sermon.
Sermon, then TDP. Yeah, good call.
So they got to keep the streak going. So Latu, see ya.
Well, I'll say this. Vincent might be a fine tight end. I love that they didn't go that route and that they got Green. I think Green's going to be a really good player, and I think it's at a position of need also. So I'm happy that that's the route that they ended up going. I just, like I said, I am curious to see how early do they prioritize tight end next year. What are the tight ends coming out of the draft? And I'm probably honestly going to forget that this whole thing happened come next year's draft. So somebody try to remind me when we're trying to figure out who's going to get drafted where and guys to look at. We probably want to put a lot of stock into tight end because that is a position that the 49ers are likely going to look for in next year's draft, but we'll see. Brother Bob says, why did Bosa, Demo, and other uninjured players not participate? Well, we know Trent Williams was at I think like a graduation or something, or daughter's graduation, something like that. So he'll be there tomorrow, but probably won't participate. It really sounds like Kyle Shanahan is talking about these players and some of these veterans. The reason they hold them out is because they weren't necessarily full participants in the early stages, and they don't want to be the reason that these players get injured and pull hamstrings or what have you. So they don't want to throw them out there unless they were there for all the stages prior. So that's the only thing that I can imagine. At least they were there, I guess.
It was all maintenance. It seemed like I think Bosa and Demo were there during the voluntary mini camps, even though they didn't practice full strength. But I think if they have any kind of tightness, soreness, he's just holding them out, is what I mentioned. Just like because there's no reason right now, he says.
Justin says, so now Jesse wants us to pull receipts from a year ago. Hey, it doesn't matter. Receipts get pulled on me either way. If the receipt was helpful, at the very least, I can enjoy the receipt being pulled. Like, please pull the receipt to help the show be better when we're talking draft next year. I'll take that.
And you need the receipt to make the return. So if you want to return that that statement, you need the receipt to be able to do that.
Yeah, you got to return that take, man. Then you got to have a receipt pulled if you want to return it. And these takes are like Costco, man. We really will take back anything a year later. It doesn't matter. We do not discriminate. So,
and we give more than store credit.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Here's something that interestingly is happening. I mean, we were talking about the Aiyuk side of things. We talked about Logan Thomas being brought aboard, how they almost drafted a tight end in round 2. What we do know also is they drafted 2 receivers. Is the offensive philosophy, does it seem to be headed towards a change this year? Is there going to be some tweaks? Are we going to see more empty sets with Brock Purdy? Remember, Kyle Shanahan did talk about this a little bit, that this is where Brock Purdy seemed to be comfortable in college. We saw it a lot in the Super Bowl for one reason or another. It might have been matchup based, who knows? But now it seems like they do have the weapons. If Aiyuk's going to be there, you've got a lot of players, a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of really good pass catchers, frankly, CMC being one of them out of the backfield. Do you think we're going to start to see some philosophy changes with the 49ers offense? Or do you think we're going to see the same old stuff and it's going to be tough to get some of these guys like Pearsall touches in the pass game?
I mean, the question was asked, actually, I think, to Kyle, asked if we're going to see more, more spread type sets with the tight ends and, the pass catchers and whatnot. And he said, no philosophies are going to be changed. But do I believe him? No. And the reason why I don't believe him is because Purdy. I think we haven't seen him, go through the progressions with a quarterback, right? By this point with Jimmy, they were already looking for the back. They were like every single offseason that Jimmy was on the team, Jesse, I remember we used to talk about it. He was flirting with some quarterback, right? Whether it be Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, trading up in the draft. There was always he was always searching for the quarterback on the team. We haven't seen that at all with Purdy there, right? Purdy is the guy. And the natural progression of things is that you give the guy more and more trust as he's more and more in your system. And I think, like you mentioned, Purdy, if you give him, the wideouts, he has the mobility to be able to buy time, whether in the pocket or scramble out of the pocket and get the ball to the receivers in a place that they could catch the ball. And I think especially what we saw, in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, we know what defenses are going to try to do to the 49ers now. They're going to try to play aggressive with the receivers. They're going to try to play that press man, and that's why you got receivers that are good against press man, and Aiyuk is one of those guys. And I think that I personally think that we're going to see the ball aired out a little bit more this season, if not significantly more, which would be breaking a trend for Kyle Shanahan because he's usually nowhere near the top of it as far as how many passes per game there is. Now, some of that is because they're usually far ahead in the fourth quarter, so you don't need to pass the ball that much. You kind of just run the ball out and whatnot. But some of it is just his philosophy. So maybe this is more projection. Like I want to see them throw the ball more, but it seems like with all the moves that they're making, that's the direction they're going.
Well, do you think, I mean, just from a standpoint of you're still in an evaluation process with Brock Purdy, right? Don't you think it would also just be smart to air it out a little bit more and put a little bit more on him and just see what you actually have? And yeah,
see if he's worth 50
well.
million, 60 million, because ultimately if you pay him, it's going to be that much, whether or not, so I agree with you completely. Like if he can't handle throwing the ball 35 to potentially 40 times a game, maybe he isn't the guy. And maybe, you pivot out of that somehow. Or if he is the guy, then okay, let's give him the money and you can feel fully confident with that.
Yeah, I think that the smart play would be to put more on his shoulders. And frankly, I mean, I think Brock's also earned that. You know what I mean? I think Brock has earned to have more on his shoulders, whether that's being able to call audibles or, what have you at the line, whether that's calling his own protections, whether that's just throwing the ball more. I think all those things have been earned. And if he hadn't earned those things, okay, I would understand not going and getting more weapons for him. But it really does seem like yes, Kyle's saying one thing, but also Kyle's interesting because strategic wise, he doesn't say a lot. He usually doesn't give a lot away. And even when he's asked direct questions, he won't answer them. And when he does answer them, it's always like, okay, you said this during the preseason or the offseason, but you ended up doing this. So I do try to believe what's coming out of his mouth, but sometimes it is hard because he definitely has done this in the past. And what they've done from a roster standpoint versus what he's saying does not seem to be matching up at all, especially if Brandon Aiyuk is on this team. I think it would be fun. I think it would be an interesting wrinkle. I don't think it's something you want to do at all times, but I'd like to see him go 5 wide a few times a game, run a little hurry up, maybe put some of that on Brock, run some of the 2-minute warning stuff, even if it's not necessarily in a 2-minute situation, just to keep the offense moving and take advantage of some of the defensive matchups that are on the field. I think there's a couple things that I would like to see added to his offense. As great as it is at times, it does get a little vanilla. And I think adding a 5 wide receiver set or 5 pass catcher set, essentially that could be CMC and Kittle thrown into that, and a little bit of hurry up. I think it would be fun for me to watch and all of us to watch. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. And I mean, it would give defenses another thing to focus on, right? As many tricks as you could pull out of the hat, I think is going to bode well for the 49ers, because like you mentioned, especially in the playoffs when you're playing better defenses and so on and so forth, you got to have more, specialty. I mean, we just saw a fight with Islam and Dustin Poirier, right? And, it was, everything that Islam was doing initially, Dustin had like a rebuttal, because he's used to seeing this. Then Islam had to bag so deep that he had that ankle pick at the end, and finishing it with the Darce choke. But that's because he's so elite at grappling, having that many moves. Like ultimately, you saw the clip afterwards. I don't know if you watched it, but Dustin didn't have a rebuttal for that. He didn't know how to. He was just like, I don't know what that was. I just got beat. And so that's kind of, you want to see that from a guy like Kyle Shanahan, where, his offensive philosophy is being copied so much by other teams that, now, okay, what's that next wrinkle you could put to continue to be ahead of the curve? And I think before he didn't have maybe the horses to be able to do that, specifically the quarterback that he trusted to be able to do that. But all signs are pointing to he does trust his quarterback, and I believe he potentially has the ability, yet to be seen. But like you mentioned, there's so many reasons there to at least try it out to see, because ultimately, if it works out well, it's going to give you a better chance to win a Super Bowl. If it doesn't work out well, it gives you a better opportunity to understand what choices you need to make next offseason.
Well, I think there's a lot of options too. I mean, you can go your top 3 receivers down to Jennings. You can throw on Kittle and CMC. There's your 5. You could take Kittle out and replace him with Pearsall, or CMC out and replace him with Pearsall. You could take both of them out and put in Cowing and Pearsall. Like, there's so many different options and so many different specialties that you can have out there. You can have your speed guy in Cowing. You can have your lined up next to your possession guy in Jawan Jennings. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different options that they can do. It's like, just try to find a way to get all these guys on the field, get them prepared, because you never know when you're going to need them either. When you're looking at some of these blowout situations, keep Purdy out there, run some things that you may not necessarily be running. I'm fine with that as well. Get some of these guys reps and just have a little bit of fun with it, because you never know when you're going to need Pearsall in a big moment or Cowing in a big moment, or you're going to get to a Super Bowl and it's like, well, we haven't ran a lot of 5 wide all season, but now we need it because we're playing against 3 good press man corners. Well, we need a 4th and a 5th guy out in routes that can go get open on a regular basis. How do we do that? This is how we do it. So not a lot of teams are going 5 deep at the corner position. You know what I mean? So I just think they have the weapons to do whatever they want. Now it's just, what is the extent of Kyle Shanahan's creativity? How much is he willing to kind of flex on some of his principles and sprinkle these things in to be ready? I don't know, man. I'm all for it. I love high flying offenses, and I think Purdy's a really good trigger man to play point guard and just hit a lot of these underneath routes timely, accurately, and move them down the field. And I think it could be a lot of fun to watch it.
I agree.
Samir says, smart to test BP. You already know you can run. Yeah, isn't that the truth? I mean, what? How much more do you need to see them run the ball to know that they can run the ball? Ricky says, why is Kittle's career with the Niners coming to an end, yet Travis Kelce is much older and still productive? Maybe let me rephrase it. I don't know that it's like coming to an end like next year by any means, but I think there's a few things at play. One, first of all, is on the other side of 30. So, he's closer to the end than the beginning. That's factual. His contract is only a couple more years. So even if he wants to continue playing, do the 49ers think he's productive enough to re-sign? That's a question mark. And also, Kittle and Travis Kelce are very different. I look at Kittle as more of a closer to a Gronk style, where he's had a lot of injuries throughout his career. He's more of a blocker on the line than Kittle. And I think that even though he plays the same position, I doubt it's as likely that he makes it to 35 and is still highly productive as what Travis Kelce's done, just because of the style of play and wear and tear on his body. Everybody plays the game a little bit differently. Everybody's dealt with injuries a little bit differently. And I think Kittle, unfortunately for him, a lot of those injuries have stockpiled.
Yeah, I've always been starkly opposed to Jesse's take on Kittle. I think Kittle's here for, another 3 years, 4 years. I think he retires as a 49er because ultimately the gap that Kittle has compared to the rest of the tight ends in the league, even if he declines a little bit, he's still significantly better than 90% of the tight ends. And I think the 49ers have shown that they believe the same thing and how little they've tried to replace him or find a replacement for him through the draft or through free agency.
Well, I'll say this. They haven't even been able to find a solid number 2. So, I mean, the chances of them replacing him at this point is slim to none. So, I mean, your bet of him playing a while does look pretty good. I'm just saying, like, if I told you Kittle's body completely left him at 34 and Kelce played, until 36, 37.
Sure. Kelce's a much more finesse player than.
Yeah.
Much more finesse player and is utilized differently by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, even in a year where Kittle, for the first time in a while, stayed healthy all the way through, he dealt with a core injury for half the season that nagged on him a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's just different style of play. It's like looking at Debo and being like, well, Jerry Rice played till he was 40. Why can't Debo? Or why couldn't Randy Moss? You know what I mean? Like everybody's a little bit different. What they bring to the table athletically. How much do they rely on that? What do the injuries look like? So I think there's a lot of factors for it. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the contract thing doesn't play into it. Maybe nothing plays. Maybe he does play till he's 37 for all I know. I just feel like if I'm making a bet, looking at the contract thing, looking at the injury history, I just feel like the end is closer for him than what it was at Travis Kelce at 31, who really actually didn't even start producing until he was like 29 or whatever. So
right.
I don't know. Just different situations is all I'm looking at. Brother Bob says, Sunil, Nails, will we win the frickin' Super Bowl? If not, why?
Yes, if we don't, it's injuries.
Ooh, good point. No, I don't think they're gonna win a Super Bowl. I just think that teams around them have gotten better. I also agree with the injury standpoint. The 49ers were extremely healthy last year, the healthiest they had been in the Shanahan era. You add in the fact that you're already starting off in a worse spot. You've got 3 major players that are going to presumably be there for week 1, but they're coming off of surgery. Then you've got another player in Greenlaw who's not going to be there week 1, most likely. He's going to miss some time. So you're already starting off on the wrong foot. You're a year older. I think injuries are tough to predict. You don't want to predict them, but to guess that they're going to be as healthy as last year with this start, probably not. And then I just think teams have gotten enough better to where it makes your job harder. And if they don't get the number 1 seed, I think that gets even tougher. So I'm going to say, and also let's just be honest, it's easier to take the field versus one team. if you ask me right now, field or Kansas City Chiefs, who just won 2, I would still take the field. So it's not even necessarily a 49er thing. I just think taking the field is the safe bet. So no, I'll say that they don't win a Super Bowl, because being right on that is a lot easier. As it says to Neil, if it's just injuries, then why didn't we win a Super Bowl last year?
Because Andy Reid is a better coach than Kyle Shanahan, and Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than
I almost spit my water out. Are you sure you mean that?
I've always said that. Yeah, I think Andy Reid is going to go down as the greatest coach of all time, and Patrick Mahomes is going to go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. 49ers have only lost. Kyle Shanahan has only lost a quarterback, only lost a Super Bowl to Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. You put them up against any. Hopefully, when they make it to the Super Bowl this year, it'll be up against a different combination, and I think they win it. I think you agree too. If they played the Bengals in the Super Bowl the year the Rams did, wouldn't you believe that they win the Super Bowl against the year the Rams did?
Yeah, I think so. I would have picked them against the Bengals for sure.
I think that Andy Reid and it's not even what I think. The facts are, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are just the most elite combination.
You shocked the chat at this point. Brother Bob says, Daz, exactly. Whoa, Reed.
I've ate across from Brother Bob and told him this to his face, yet somehow he's excited and confused now. Come on,
Dez says, so if it's Reed Mahomes, then how are we winning a Super Bowl this year or any year in the future? I think he's hoping that maybe they don't play them in the Super Bowl, I guess.
Yes.
All right. So if they play the Kansas City Chiefs, you would pick the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I would have to at that point.
All right. Would you feel, let me ask you this. Would you feel any better? This is a lot of hypotheticals, so don't hold his feet to the fire too much. But question, if they beat the Chiefs in the regular season, would you feel any better about it? Or are you just like, whatever, it's the regular season?
Yeah. Nah, until the 49ers can show they could beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl as that combination, I'm going to pick them over the 49ers. That's the only team, though.
All right. Brother Bob says, lies. Nails picked the Bengals over us in the Super Bowl. That was last year. He's talking about 3 years ago or whatever when they made it. Remember, they had beaten the Bengals in that regular season. So, yeah. But like I said, come on, give me some credit. I did pick the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl and lose before the season started and to go 12-5. That's pretty good. I just didn't have the opposing team right. And you'll never let me hear the end of it. I understand. So, Neil, you got a dinner to get to with the girlfriend. I've got another show to prepare for that starts in an hour. Go check out the Hawks Nest channel, Seattle Seahawks channel. I'm going to be on there. We're going to be talking about the Seahawks offseason, the 49ers offseason, the NFC West as a whole. So go check that out. I'll be over there at 10 p.m. Eastern. And I need some 49er fans to represent and troll a little bit, show that we are the fan base to be reckoned with, take over the chat if we can. Remember, it's the Hawks Nest. You'll find them there. You'll see that the show is going to be live in about an hour with Brandon. Sunil, as always, thank you so much for providing your time on Tuesdays. We'll see you next Tuesday. And until next time, chat, peace.